Well, today, DA Jackie Lacey decided the officer here, Clifford Proctor, should not receive any criminal charges. This is an officer-involved shooting back in May of 2015 in Venice, just a little bit before midnight. It was a hot summer night when police were called on reports of a man who was bothering people outside of a Venice bar.
My dog,
The legal issue is a narrow one. Did LAPD Officer Clifford Proctor, who's now no longer on the force, have a reasonable belief that Brendan Glenn posed an imminent threat of great bodily injury to himself or to others? District Attorney Jackie Lacey concluded yes, so no criminal charges will be filed against the former officer.
More than 10 years after a fatal officer-involved shooting in Venice, California, prosecutors charged former LAPD Officer Clifford Proctor with second-degree murder.
Today, the DA released this video, which captured some of the interaction between the officers and the 29-year-old man.
all of a sudden, because I turned my back.
Officer Jonathan Kawahara captured this video on his body-worn camera as he and his partner Clifford Proctor first approached Glenn. The officers told him to grab his belongings and go, and he appeared to comply. A few minutes later, a security camera captured Glenn as he approached people outside of a nearby bar where, witnesses told DA investigators, Glenn began yelling racial epithets and arguing with people. That's when the two officers returned.
If you look very closely at the video, it appears that the officers were losing control of him. So in that situation, where you have guns readily available to a struggling suspect who is under the influence, belligerent, it is not unreasonable, it's not much of a leap to realize that the officer shot him because he believes that there was some threat of danger or harm.
Police Chief Charlie Beck looked at the same evidence and came to the opposite conclusion, that former Officer Clifford Proctor committed manslaughter when he took the life of Brendan Glenn.
He unreasonably believed that his life was in danger, and therefore he took a life.
It was presented as a long-awaited step towards accountability.
Well, this arrest is coming 10 years after the initial incident, so many people wondering now, is this justice finally being served or just a political show?
Once he found out that he was being charged or close to being charged, he fled the country and remained out of the United States until now.
A former LAPD officer who fatally shot an unarmed homeless man in Venice 10 years ago has been arrested. 60-year-old Clifford Proctor was taken into custody Thursday at LAX and is now being held on $2 million bail on a felony murder warrant.
But now a judge has dismissed the indictment, not because the shooting didn't happen, not because the questions surrounding that encounter disappeared. It was because the judge found that the prosecution had not legally established the elements required for a murder indictment, and that included significant exculpatory evidence that was not presented to the grand jury. And so when we take a look at cases like this, our attention goes immediately. This isn't about the one officer, it's about the system, it's about the prosecution and how things were seen differently. And this is how we go about building cases. So tonight what we're going to do is separate the emotion from the evidence, the headlines, and we're going to take a look at the legal standards and opinion from an investigative methodology, if you will. And before we're finished, I'm thinking that you're going to go ahead and take a look at this, and you're going to probably ask one question that a lot of people don't ask, and they're going to go ahead and say, hey, guess what? What happened to the prosecution, and why did they choose murder?
This is the Hill of Justice.
So welcome to the Hill of Justice. I'm Jerome Hill, former detective and state investigator, and with me is retired Sheriff Victor Hill. So when former Officer Clifford Proctor was arrested, the headlines focused on one fact. It was a homeless man by the name of Brendan Glenn. He had been shot twice in the back, and the emotions ran high all over the place. The media coverage described the encounter and the delayed prosecution and the murder charge as, being incomprehensible. And that's understandable if you want to look at that like that. But truthfully, a life was lost. And the Glenn family deserved those type of answers, particularly not 10 years later, but this is where we're at. And we want to go ahead and take a look at every element that we see. The public deserves some type of transparency. But we have to ask a different question. And it's not what do I think happened? It's what we have to take a look at is what can actually be proven. This is where we're at with this. So, brother, you got to see a little bit of what we had video. It's inconclusive, but at the same time, it gives us clues. You have to read a little bit what was going on. So, what were some of the things that stood out?
Well, what stood out to me is if it's a clear execution, why is it that that's not being shown? You get these little clips, you see the officer with his hand on his weapon, but nowhere can I see, at least we weren't able to find today, a video of what happened from the beginning to the end. And anytime the media does that, that worries me, because if they have video like that, they're going to show it. If it's a clear beating, a clear execution, they're going to show it because they want the shock and awe. So the fact that I didn't see that today when I was researching it makes it very, very suspicious. You know, we do I believe in holding cops accountable? Of course I do. I probably fired more cops than any administrator in the history of this country if we look at the numbers all together. But they were clear, concise stuff. And the one thing that I've always been a stickler for is willful intent. Anytime you charge somebody with something, even if it's just a policy, did they have the willful intent to do what you're accusing them of doing? And this police accountability thing has gotten so political where prosecutors feel that to make a name for themselves or prove something to a particular group of people that they think will keep them elected, they want a sacrificial lamb to say, yeah, see, I locked up this many cops, I indicted this many cops. And it's not about that. If a cop does something wrong, I have no problems with firing him. I've done it before. I have no problems with locking up a cop if he does something intentional. I've had cops hit people while they're handcuffed, stuff like that. That's a no-brainer. But in a situation like this where it's not clear and no one can show that there was a willful intent to commit murder, that's where the politics gets involved. And here's the elephant in the room that no one wants to hear. Okay. But we need to repeat this over again. Stop running from cops, stop fighting cops, and stop arguing with cops. I remember the old man, I'm not talking about our father, but I call him the old man because he was like a second father to me and his son. And I'll never forget this conversation he had with us. He sat us down when we were just 16 or 17 and we were just getting ready to go out. And he said, I want to tell y'all something. He said, listen, the police, they have the authority to use that gun they carry, and they will use it. He said, do not run from them. Do not fight them. Do not argue with them. Do not resist them. Whatever happens, come bring it to me and let me go deal with it. Mm-hmm. And we've created a culture where it's cool to fight with the cops. It's cool to run from them. It's cool to argue with them. Then when it goes south, then that person is a victim, and there's this culture of, well, we don't care what they did. The cop shouldn't have done that. I'm not saying that what people do justifies a cop using unnecessary force, but it's a catalyst for it. And I think if we start having the conversation with our young people and everybody that Mr. Roper had with me and his sons, and stop this craziness of every time you confront the cops, let's argue, let's fight, let's run, a lot of this can come to a stop, and it'll make it easier for administrators to administer justice when the cops are really, really out of control.
When investigators revisit old cases, and this is definitely one, let's go back 10 years ago where his own police chief wanted him charged with manslaughter, not murder, manslaughter. It was the reigning DA at the time that did not want to prosecute that. So when we have those type of decisions, we revisit this, usually there's something else that pops up, right? A new DNA, a confession, a witness who finally comes forward, some new forensic technology, or a major procedural discovery. So we take a look at these type of things and we have to ask, what new evidence, emerged? Or did the legal, and this can happen too, and I need people to understand this, did the legal interpretation change? And you talked a little bit underlining about that, but it could be for good or it could be for bad. And we have to recognize that.
Or was it just plain politics? Here's what a lot of people got to understand about prosecutors. Okay. There's two types of investigations. There's an investigation, which is all I know because that's all I've ever been a part of. Something happens, we get called to a scene. There's a dead body, there's a robbery. We got to figure out who did it. It has nothing to do with, I don't like this guy, or let's say there's a legitimate crime, but there's a guy down the street I don't like. So you know what? Let's pin it on him, or let's plant some evidence on him to make someone think he did it. That's not how it works. How it works is there's a body, there's a crime, and we investigate it, and then wherever the facts lead us is fine. But when you decide that there's a person that you want to select or you want to target, and you haven't necessarily been called to a crime, it's just that, hey, I want to prosecute this person. Well, let's find a reason to prosecute him. Well, let's open up an investigation. Well, we can't find anything. Well, let's make up something. There's a political win right now where we need to prosecute a cop. Well, hey, this is the perfect case to do it. And we can't be so sure that's not the case. I mean, it's easy to second, but let me tell you, one of the most dangerous things that we've ever done, well, not we, but prosecutors, and let me say we because administrators, because some administrators do this, is second guessing cops on everything. Okay.
Police chief didn't.
Well, why you say he didn't second guess him? He said he wanted to prosecute him for manslaughter.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So that's second guessing because, okay, did he have the willful intent to commit manslaughter?
What part? I'm trying to get your logic with the willful intent for manslaughter. Where is the willful intent? I can see murder. I could see you can.
I'm not talking about malice of forethought. I'm talking about willful intent. When you look at a crime, you need to also, did this person have the intent to commit a crime? Meaning, okay, you could tell by certain evidence or the video that this person intended for this outcome.
Right, but that doesn't mean a crime doesn't exist.
Yes, it can when you're talking about certain types of crime. You get in a fight with a person and you're defending yourself, and this person falls and he hits something and then he dies. Okay?
Right.
Your intent was not to kill him. Your intent, if he started the fight, wasn't even to be in a fight.
Sure.
So you're charging a person with manslaughter who didn't even have the intentions of being in the fight in the first place, and then he's in a self-defense situation. And that's what I'm saying. That's what prosecutors are not doing. They're not looking at, okay, was there a willful intent to commit a crime?
But in this case, we could take a look at the fact that he used a weapon and in close quarters. I'm just giving you a legal theory here, legal strategy. And you could take a look at the fact that he used his weapon, he used it in close quarters, and the necessary use of that force was reckless, and thus you could get charged for manslaughter.
Okay, but people use their weapons in close quarters. You're wrestling over your weapon, and you're trying to figure out how to point it away, or you point it at the person. That's very possible. That doesn't mean you have the intent to commit a crime. That don't mean you went into the intent to kill somebody.
Right. And I'm saying that you don't really need to have the intent, without we getting charged with manslaughter.
When you talk about sending someone to jail for the rest of his life, that's something you need to consider. Because if you're not considered, you second guessing it. You're talking about a person that went to work and got called to a call. He didn't say, you know what? Look at that guy right there. Let's go fight with him. Let's go shoot him. He gets called to a call. The guy starts fighting. It's a fluid situation. Was it his intent to kill that man?
Right.
And
it wasn't.
We can't say it was, can we?
No. But that's why we have.
Quick to want to send him to prison.
Well, I get what you're saying on that end of it, but that's why there's tiers here too.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to say Get back to the other point of it too. It doesn't mean that the earlier decision that either the chief or the legal strategy of the first DA was right or wrong. It just means that it's the legal strategy may have changed. For politics will always be in the case as long as there are DAs, lawyers, judges. There will always be politics in it.
But it shouldn't, and each
But
decision should be
how do
made
you
by
take
the
that away?
case. Well, one thing you should do is what they started doing here in Georgia. I mean, it doesn't take it completely away, not, but making these positions nonpartisan.
Hmm.
Because when you got DAs that have partisan politics, well, then, okay, well, hey, let's start locking up people because we don't want the other side to win the election.
Hmm.
Or let's start locking up cops because right now that's the political win, and our party is about holding cops accountable or whatever. And then you get a windstorm like what we had happen here in Atlanta, where we had a situation during the riots where the mayor, you got a riot, the cops are trying to handle it, and everything that happens, hey, put them in jail, put them in jail. And they all ultimately ended up being exonerated. But that was a political win at that time, especially because she thought she was getting ready to be vice president. She thought this was a good way to get her there by showing that, hey, I'm going to hold my cops accountable. I'm going to lock them up every chance I get. In both situations, it was very reasonable what they did. Was it pretty? No, but force is never pretty. So, like I said, so when we look at this situation here, anyone can argue it from both sides. You can look at any use of force situation and say, "Well, I think it was excessive." Other person can say, "Well, whatever." But what we got to look at is, did this person have the intent to commit a crime? Was his intent, "I'm going to murder this guy," or was it a fluid situation? The sad part when you're wrestling with people, you got all this equipment on you, so there's always a weapon involved, even if that person doesn't have a weapon, because your weapon is involved. They teach us at the police academy. But if I saw a clear video of an execution, this would be a no-brainer. If this guy was laying down flat, he'd given up, and the officer just put the gun in the back of his head, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now.
Sure, but that's not how most cases are with clear, convincing evidence.
And if it's not clear and convincing, why are we sending people to prison?
Because this is how this justice system works in the United States.
And
We do a bunch
then
of
it's working
inductive and
wrong.
deductive reason. I'm not saying that there isn't room for growth, because there certainly is. But where you are talking about the other part of this statement was the officer. Of course, we know that the chief had fired the officer. The other officer contradicted what the shooting officer was saying, that
Okay.
he went for his gun. N- the other officer said no. So where do we place that in everything? I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't be that way.
But again, I don't know what this chief's politics were. We don't know if this was a person that they had something against. It's so hard to say, because one thing we know for sure: cops lie, judges lie, prosecutors lie. Ask me how I know.
Mhm.
Okay, but here's the thing: what does the video say? And it just interested to me that every time I tried to find a video, because I wanted to be able to have a clear knowledge of what we're talking about today. Every time we look at the video, they never show the whole thing.
Mhm.
Now, maybe it's out there somewhere, but I'm thinking if it's a clear execution and they got that on film, the media, they're going to play it over and over again.
Mhm.
I mean, I can still see every hit Rodney King ever took because they played it 1,000 times. Anytime they got something clear and concise, they play it over and over again. It's just interesting to me that today, on a day where they should be showing a clear execution as to why this judge shouldn't have made the decision that he made, that we're not seeing a video like that.
Well, even with that video, remember those officers were exonerated. You do see that. So
Right.
no matter what you say on that end of it, we can find the inverse somewhere else.
Mhm.
So, our arguments should be based on the underlying facts of the case, and not just go ahead and automatically excuse inaccuracies, because, we're trying to establish criminal intent. But we take a look at many people who are driving, going from one place to another. They hit somebody. What did they get charged with? Involuntary manslaughter.
Okay, but you talk about charging this officer with manslaughter, not involuntary
Well,
manslaughter.
this one was charged with murder, and this is my point exactly, that
Right.
they made a mistake. The DA made a mistake.
And what did the chief say he should be charged with? Did he say he should be
Manslaughter.
charged with involuntary manslaughter or
He
manslaughter?
said manslaughter.
Manslaughter is he had the intent to kill someone. Involuntary manslaughter is negligence. So if we want to say, we understand if you have a traffic accident, you can get caught, you can get charged with vehicle homicide. It's an accident, but there's a charge for that because it means you were driving recklessly and you caused someone to die.
I would imagine that the officer, when he said that he was not going for his weapon, that played into a great deal into whether that was an involuntary manslaughter charge and then to a manslaughter charge, according to the chief.
But here's the problem I got with this again. It's just amazing to me because I know how the media operates. Because I know we're not gonna get into my case, but they played a video that I wasn't in at a jail that had nothing to do with me, that showed some officers doing something to a man in a chair. Now, why would they play that when that's not me, it's not my case, and I never did anything to anybody in the chair? It's just interesting to me that the media today is playing a video, but you never get to see the full video. They just stop it at one point where the officer has his hand on the gun. And it can't be because they're sensitive and they don't want people to see graphic stuff, because they show graphic stuff to us all the time because they want to radio. It's not like we're dealing with choir boys in the media. They basically have a license to lie. So if they got a video that clearly shows an execution, an assassination, or whatever, it's just interesting that you and I couldn't find that today.
Well, I also think that, it comes down to Chief Beck and what his reported position was. And I think it really shows, even if we see the things differently as brothers, it illustrates how experienced professionals can evaluate the same event differently under the law. And I think that's what happened.
But who knows? But was that truly his opinion? Remember, a police chief works for a mayor and politicians. So his opinion is going to be whatever that mayor wants his opinion to be so he can keep his job. So was that the police chief's a real decision? Or was the mayor on a particular side of politics where, hey, listen, as my chief, I need you to keep these officers accountable? Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. We don't even know that. That might not even be his real decision. Because unfortunately, a police chief is in a very awkward position. There's an old saying about chiefs and sheriffs, that sheriffs run for office every 4 years and police chiefs run for office every county commission or every city council meeting. And a lot of them are one vote away from not being a chief anymore. So we don't even know if that's his decision or not. He could be going with the whims of the majority of the votes on his council to keep his job. If he got a mayor and 2 or 3 council members or a chief, he got to hold this guy accountable. My constituents or whatever. Okay, so we don't even know that, do we?
No, we don't. And even if we don't know that, we don't know the inverse of that either. Maybe he didn't.
We don't. But I know one thing. I think the worst thing that has happened is when these prosecutors went on a rampage of locking up cops in the name of holding them accountable. They're not even holding themselves and their own prosecutors and their officers accountable. But when they go on this holy witch hunt or whatever, any shooting, they try to make an officer dot an I and cross a T on a situation where they can't even handle, that they can't even say they wouldn't react it the same way he did. It's easy to Monday morning a person who's fighting with somebody and he think he's about to get his gun taken, or he think he's in danger, or the guy reaches for something and he really thought it was a shiny object and he thought, oh, he's reaching for a gun. In his mind, he thought it was a gun. And the courts have ruled that if an officer reasonably believes that his life is in danger, he can use force. And the reason they had to do that is because when officers hesitate, like we got them hesitating now, they get themselves killed, or they're not able to defend other people because they're hesitant, because what you're trying to do is say, okay, what's behind curtain number 1 and number 2? And if he's wrong, well, he didn't know what was behind curtain number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're telling him, well, You made a decision, but you were wrong after the fact. So guess what? You go to jail. How do we expect these people to go out and to defend us under those type of scrutiny that no normal person can survive when you got these people sitting at a desk? I need someone to prosecute. Well, I don't think he should have done that. I don't think he should have done that. And then you put them in the exact same situation and let them be out of breath wrestling with somebody or think their gun's about to get taken, and they would probably do the same thing. And now we got the cops too afraid to do anything, and we basically giving the streets back to the criminals because of that. I'm not saying we should let cops go out there and execute people or whatever. We're not going to do that. I fired a whole lot of cops for excessive force, but it was clear and intention. It was clear. It was very, very clear. And what I saw today, they didn't give us anything clear. All we got was conjecture. Well, this person said this person thinks this, or whatever. Well, obviously the judge didn't see it that way.
Okay. So we also have, and just a little bit of pushback on that. We've also seen officers use that as a cheat code to kill other people. So I think you mentioned a little bit about that. So it can go both ways on that. Now let's talk about.
So, and let me stop you on that. I agree, it can go both ways on that. And that's why you got to have that clear and convincing evidence. They're trying to use a cheat code. We've got the video, we've got whatever. This proves that this person is lying. Do we have that in this case?
Well, what we do have is malice. You want to talk about malice, right? Well, malice comes in two different forms. Okay. So we can have express malice, we can have implied malice. Now, the difference with express is just saying, hey, guess what? That was the intent to kill. But you can also have implied malice.
So what's the implied malice?
So the implied malice is committing a dangerous act while knowing it endangers human life with a conscious disregard for the risk.
Okay, but again, I can see he's outside playing with a gun. It's disregarded. He was called to a scene. He's trying to make an arrest. The person started resisting an arrest. Right. Did they drive down the street and he said, you know what? I think I'm going to shoot this guy today. Two different things.
Sure.
You know, everybody told, I don't care what happened. We need to care what happened because you got to look at the totality of the circumstances. He was dispatched to a call to a person that no one had said anything that he knew this guy before, had dealings with him before, right? Like, you know, we had a situation, I think, in Memphis where the officer knew this person. They had some type of beef over a female. So it was able to put together that, hey, there's a little bit more to this. This is not, you know, you could put like, okay, hey, we got some willful intent here. This is not like a stranger and he just got called here. Here's a guy that he actually had some type of situation with over a female. But do we have this here? Does he know this guy? Has he ever had contact with this guy before? You get called, you're in a fight with a guy, a shooting happens. How can we show that was his willful intent?
Well, I will tell you that the judge concluded that the evidence presented to the grand jury did not establish probable cause. And
it hardly ever does, because they lie to grand juries all the time just to get an indictment. They
sure, and
a ham sandwich.
What they said was Officer Proctor acted with malice. That's what the grand jury was saying, right? And
are they mind readers, heart readers? How they know?
You know, but this is what the judge is why he struck it down. He said the essential element of murder was not met. It's not supported by the legal theories. But and we are talking about the specific mental state too of a second degree murder charge. So I think that this is where investigators have to separate the tragic outcome from a legal element of a crime. That Brandon Glenn died, and that's unfortunate. He's a homeless individual, and you know, I don't know if he had any mental health issues or anything like that. He certainly wasn't armed, and certainly what was purported by the officer that he was trying to reach for a weapon. But you know, we have to take a look at this, and we have to go ahead and question whether the evidence proves the suspect acted with malice, and according to the judge, The prosecutors didn't make that. They didn't make that showing.
Well, I think we need more judges out there that rule on common sense and the law. I've got the experience when you got a judge that doesn't. And you know what I'm saying? And that, they rule on emotion or what they think is going to satisfy the crowd.
Mhm.
And that's not what a judge is supposed to do. And again, a lot of these charges that prosecutors are putting on officers in the line of duty, in the heat of battle, and I'm not saying all of them, because there's some obvious cases where these officers are wrong and they need to be removed from the force and they need to be prosecuted. I'm not arguing with that. But we have to give officers in a lot of situations great deference, because they're dealing with situations where if they're wrong or if they don't act in a certain time, they could lose their lives or be seriously injured, or other people could. And they have to be able to act without hesitation or reservation to stop that. And then when they do, anyone can twist it and then make a case and send them to prison, and that's not right.
Right. And I think we're getting to where the possibility was that the prosecutors believed they had enough evidence to establish implied malice. And with that being,
I don't think they thought that at all. I think they just say, "Hey, we get ready to prosecute a cop, and it's going to be a big case." Most of them are not. They don't even think that far. They just think, "Hey, listen, let's get an indictment. Let's get a news conference." It's sad, but most of them, that's not what it's about. It's about a feather in the cap. Either let's get someone with a name or get someone with a title.
and
The fact that this took so long shows that there's something flaky about this case.
well, not necessarily, because if you have a DA and you have a chief who are at odds about what the case is all about, and they have different legal strategies or different legal positions to it, just because a new DA comes in doesn't mean it's right or wrong
Is,
for what the old DA did,
is
and
it
it's not right or
legal
wrong from the new as in.
strategies or is it politics?
It could be either one, but the fact
Yeah.
of the matter is that it doesn't mean that the past DA was either was right or wrong, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that excuse me, the one that's there now is right or wrong. It's just the
Yeah.
difference of opinions about what the collective facts are.
Now, I don't know if it's a difference of opinion. Let me tell you something. If it's clear cut, I think we should have seen a video that did that's clear cut.
But and I know that most cases are not clear cut. Period. You can't be a detective, you can't be an investigator, you can't be anybody in this profession and believe that every case is going to come in front of you is going to be
I'm
clear
not
cut.
saying that every case is going to be clear cut. I'm saying that you need clear cut cases when you start trying to put people in jail for murder. I mean, like, take what happened in my hometown at a department I used to work at. An officer pulls over a man. The man has a child support warrant. He takes off running. The officer takes aim and, like, he's deer hunting something, and shoots the guy and kills him. It's clear cut. It's nothing to argue about. It's whatever. Okay, we know we did, but when you got a situation where
Was
it's
there a
not
video?
clear cut, yeah, and it's a video. There was a kid just happened
You
to
see
have a
that,
video. It
and
happened
that's
in
your
North
legal
Charleston.
standard, the video.
Well,
So
it's
what
not
if he said
necessarily.
something different?
What if he said something? He did say something different. But what I'm saying is this:
But there was video.
there was clear. There's video in this case, but it's
Mhm.
not clear on the video that we're dealing with an absolute case like that. It was clear on that video that we were.
Mhm.
And when you got situations, it's kind of like, let me tell you where I stand on the death penalty. Do I believe in the death penalty? Yes, but only when there's clear and convincing evidence, or I think as the attorney say, prima facie. If there is any doubt, we don't have DNA, we don't have this and that, I would much rather see this guy go to prison than to be executed, because if they're wrong, at least he can be released. Okay, so I'm saying when we start talking about making judgment on officers like this,
Mhm.
there should be clear, convincing evidence, like this case I'm talking about with North Charleston Police. Clear and convincing. If it's not clear and convincing, then that officer deserves some level of deference. Because if we just start blanketly charging every cop every time some DA is up for re-election or whatever, we get the chaos that we got now.
Mhm.
like the chaos we got here in Atlanta, because we have some absolute fools here for district attorney. Let me say this because I know we about at the time. Officer gets in a struggle with a guy. The other officer comes to help him and tackles him because the guy's resisting arrest. When they stand up, the guy sprained or popped his ankle or whatever. What does the district attorney of Fulton County do? Charge that officer with aggravated assault. When he tackled that officer, did he have the intent to break his ankle? No. Now I can see if he stood on the guy's leg and say, have we popped the ankle yet? Then I'd be the first to say, let's get him indicted tomorrow. But you're talking about a set of circumstances. Was his intent to break this guy's ankle? Or was his intent to stop him from resisting arrest? And when we start doing all this second guessing, the cops get afraid to do their job. When they get afraid to do their job, they stop doing it. And criminals get a free rein to do whatever they want because of silliness like this in politics.
Yeah. Well, I just think that, we do have some investigators that do conflate and DAs that do conflate, you know, what is going on. And, but that doesn't, even with those examples that you give, those are rather the exceptions than the norm. That's not the norm throughout the nation, and
It's hard. It's hard to say these. Well, I guess it depends on what the politics are in each city. But
Mhm.
I bet again, I would feel more comfortable. I was looking for the video because I was looking for a video where I could get on here and say, okay, well, hey, I don't understand why this guy wasn't put in jail 10 years ago. But we looked and we couldn't find it. All we could find was a still shot, but never something from the beginning to the end. And when the media doesn't give us something to the beginning and the end, it makes me very, very suspicious. It means that there's something out there that can go either way. You got the prosecutors; they can go tell a grand jury whatever they want because you can't defend yourself in there, and they can pretty much indict anybody they want to. And if you got a judge like Judge Eleanor Ross, she'll rubber stamp any indictment. And we did a show on her. So, but this judge here actually looked at the elements. And I think that's rare. And you know, we need judges that are going to look at the actual law and judges that, and also not just at the law and look at willful intent, but what about looking at with some common sense? What about some decent common sense?
Yeah, and I think that that's how we'll land this plane because I think the closing thought here is, especially for people in Hill Nation, and many of them are investigators, detectives, enthusiasts, and so on and so forth, that justice isn't achieved by securing the most serious charge possible. And we've talked about that. Of course, it's achieved by presenting all the relevant facts and applying the correct legal standard.
Right.
And that's where I think that this case teaches people more so than anything. Of course, the vestige of time of 10 years complicates matters. Of course, you were talking about the politics that I'm sure plays a hand in it. But we can't say one way or another because obviously and our intrusive thoughts aren't really coming out there. But what we
But
can
let me,
say,
but you're right on one thing. I want to make sure we're clear on this. Not the manslaughter, but if they had went with involuntary manslaughter, if they wanted to say it was negligent and it resulted in death, we wouldn't have much of a debate here today.
mhm, mhm.
But to try and say that he had the intent to kill, that's where you really pushing the bounds of legalities. If you want to say, well, I felt that he used his weapon recklessly because our policy says blah blah blah, that's one thing. But when you're talking about manslaughter and murder in a situation he was called to with a person that started resisting, that's where prosecutors have really destroyed law enforcement with doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and then we're taking a look at a system that should be better disciplined and to equip to deliver a result that's both fair and legally sound. And I think that
I'm
that
with you on
sums up
that.
with everything that we're talking
Absolutely.
about
I'm
in this
with you on that,
show.
brother.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's where we'll go ahead and land this. Many of you are liking, subscribing. Many of you are hitting the notification bell. We really do appreciate it. We're growing by leaps and bounds. Stick with us. We have some more cases that we have down the pipe. Just as a editorial note, at some point in time, we've been giving you this show on Saturdays, left and right. Came to an executive decisions that we should go ahead and start doing this maybe on a Wednesday or so on. So there'll be a format change and on the day that we're going to go ahead and land these videos. But we appreciate everybody's love, support, and you're following us on all our social media accounts when we really do appreciate it. Brother, today you brought it today. As always, thank you 100%. And also to our producer, Kevin Promise. We really appreciate and love you, man. So
Thank you,
without
brother.
further ado, we'll go ahead and we'll see y'all later, and especially with the next case. Talk to you soon.
This is the Hill of Justice.